In this universe, it is compulsory, under the second law of thermodynamics, that entropy cannot be reversed locally unless there is a source of energy, which is necessarily supplied by making something else even less ordered somewhere else. So the entropy of the whole system increases. The power of the improbability drive is therefore limited only by the supply of energy. So long as human beings apply energy to the world in careful ways, they can create ever more ingenious and improbable structures. The medieval castle at Dunstanburgh, I can see from the island, is an improbable structure, and its partial ruin after 700 years is more probable, more entropic. The castle in its prime was the direct consequence of the expenditure of lots of energy, in this case mainly in the muscles of masons who were fed with bread and cheese that was made from wheat and grass that was grown in sunlight and eaten by cows. John Constable, a former Cambridge and Kyoto academic, points out that the things we rely on to make our lives prosperous are, all of them without exception, physical states far from thermodynamic equilibrium, and the world was brought, sometimes over long periods of time, into these convenient configurations by energy conversion, the use of which reduced entropy in one corner of the universe, ours, and increased it by an even larger margin somewhere else. The more ordered and improbable our world becomes, the richer we become, and as a consequence, the more disordered the universe becomes overall. Innovation, then, means finding new ways to apply energy to create improbable things and see them catch on. It means much more than invention, because the word implies developing an invention to the point where it catches on because it is sufficiently practical, affordable, reliable, and ubiquitous to be worth using. The Nobel Prize-winning economist Edmund Phelps defines an innovation as a new method or new product that becomes a new practice somewhere in the world. In the pages that follow, I will trace the path of ideas from the invention to the innovation, through the long struggle to get an idea to catch on, usually by combining it with other ideas. And here is my starting point. Innovation is the most important fact about the modern world, but one of the least well understood. It is the reason most people today live lives of prosperity and wisdom compared with their ancestors, the overwhelming cause of the great enrichment of the past few centuries, the simple explanation of why the incidence of extreme poverty is in global freefall for the first time in history, from 50% of the world population to 9% in my lifetime. What made most of us, not just in the West, but in China and Brazil too, unprecedentedly rich, so the economic historian Deirdre McCloskey says, was innovationism, the habit of applying new ideas to raising living standards. No other explanation of the great enrichment of recent centuries makes any sense. Trade had been expanding for centuries, and colonial exploitation with it, and these alone were unable to give anything like the order of magnitude of improvement in incomes that happened. There was no sufficient accumulation of capital to make such a difference, no piling of brick on brick or bachelor's degree on bachelor's degree, in McCloskey's words. There was no sufficiently great expansion in the availability of labour, nor was the scientific revolution of Galileo and Newton responsible. For most of the innovations that changed people's lives, at least at first, owed little to new scientific knowledge, and few of the innovators who drove the changes were trained scientists. Indeed, many, such as Thomas Newcomen, the inventor of the steam engine, or Richard Arkwright of the textile revolution, or George Stephenson of the railways, were poorly educated men of humble origins. Much innovation preceded the science that underpinned it. The Industrial Revolution, therefore, was in effect, as Phelps has argued, the emergence of a new kind of economic system that generated endogenous innovation as a product in itself. I will argue that some machines themselves made this possible. A steam engine proved to be autocatalytic. It drained the mines, which cut the cost of coal, which made the next machine cheaper and easier to make. But I am getting